King Viserys Targaryen I had 3 children by his first queen, Aemma Arryn, but only one, Princess Rhaenyra, survived to adulthood. Lacking a son to succeed him, Viserys began to train Rhaenyra to be his heir. Young Rhaenyra was included in discussions of affairs of the state, and was allowed to participate in meetings of the small council. The king remarried a year later, this time to Alicent Hightower, and had 4 more children, Aegon, Helena, Aemond, and Daeron. In 111 AC, a great tourney was held at King's Landing on the 5th anniversary of Viserys' marriage to Alicent. During the opening feast, Queen Alicent wore a green gown, while Princess Rhaenyra dressed in the red and black of House Targaryen. Note was taken, and thereafter it became the custom to refer to greens and blacks when talking of the Queen's party and the party of the Princess, respectively. Viserys I strengthened Rhaenyra's place in the succession by marrying her to Sir Laenor Velaryon, who himself had Targaryen blood through his mother, Princess Rhaenys. The marriage caused a falling out between Rhaenyra and Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Rhaenyra gave birth to 3 sons, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey Velaryon, during her marriage, although there were rumours that the father of these princes was not Laenor, but Sir Harwin Strong. After Laenor was murdered in Spicetown in 120 AC, Rhaenyra married her uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, younger brother to Viserys I. Her sons by him were Aegon the Younger, called so to distinguish him from his uncle, Alicent's Aegon, who on occasion was called Aegon the Elder, and Viserys. The relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent declined early in Alicent's marriage to Viserys, since both ladies had been trying to be the realm's first lady and there could be only one. As a consequence of their bad relation, Alicent's sons did not take to Rhaenyra's sons. Alicent's father, Sir Otto Hightower, had also disliked Rhaenyra's second husband, Prince Daemon, since the beginning of Viserys' reign, though the exact reasons are unknown. Upon the death of King Viserys Targaryen, Queen Alicent and Sir Criston Cole sent out the King's Guard to summon the small council. During the gathering, the conversation quickly stirred towards Rhaenyra's coronation, but Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, told those who had gathered that Prince Aegon the Elder would be crowned, whilst Lord Lyman Beesbury, the Master of Coin, insisted Rhaenyra should be crowned queen. Several other council members countered him. Sir Tywin Lannister argued that the oath made to Rhaenyra had not been made by them, since it had been 24 years. Lord Jasper Wilde mentioned that old King Jaehaerys I twice chose a male heir over the female heir and her descendants, and Sir Otto Hightower argued that Rhaenyra was married to Prince Daemon, who would become the true ruler should Rhaenyra gain the crown. Both Hightowers argued that not only they, but also Alicent's children would die should Rhaenyra become their queen. It would later be said that Prince Aegon only reluctantly accepted the crown because his mother, brother, sister and children would otherwise be killed by Rhaenyra. Grand Maester Orwyle predicted a war, believing that Rhaenyra would never be willing to give up her birthright and had dragons at her disposal. When Lyman declared that he was not willing to listen to people plotting to steal her crown and attempted to leave, Sir Criston killed him. This made Lord Beesbury the first casualty of the Dance of the Dragons. After Beesbury's death, the Green Council made their plans, vowing their loyalty to their new king and arresting all those in King's Landing who would be loyal to Rhaenyra. To all those who might be loyal to Aegon, ravens were sent. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra remained on Dragonstone, unaware of what had happened. Prince Aemond was sent to Storm's End to betroth himself to one of Lord Boros Baratheon's daughters, so House Baratheon might fight for Aegon II. By the time he left, the smell coming from Viserys' room was all over Maegor's Holdfast. 7 days after Viserys had died, his death was announced to King's Landing and the Silent Sisters were sent for. Aegon's coronation was hastily prepared. The Dragon Pit was chosen as the site for its towering bronze doors, strong roof, and thick walls made it easily defensible. Sir Crichton Cole crowned Aegon, while Alicent Hightower crowned Aegon's sister wife Helena. The night before, however, the first defection had taken place. Sir Stephen Darklyn of the King's Guard left the city with, among other things, the crown worn by Kings Jaehaerys and Viserys. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra had learned about the death of her father and the betrayal of her siblings. Anger had made her go into labour, which lasted for 3 days and brought forth a stillborn, deformed girl, whom Rhaenyra named Visenya. Rhaenyra, in answer to Aegon's betrayal, swore revenge. Rhaenyra made her own council at Dragonstone, which became known as the Black Council. Participants were, amongst others, her uncle-husband Daemon, her 3 eldest sons Jacaerys, Lucerys and Joffrey, Lord Corlys Velaryon and his wife, Princess Rhaenys. During the council, it was resolved that, while Rhaenyra remained at Dragonstone to regain her health, Prince Daemon and his dragon Caraxes would travel to the Riverlands to make Harrenhal their base and rallying point for those loyal to Rhaenyra. House Velaryon would close off the Gullet, blocking all shipping from Blackwater Bay. Princess Rhaenys was convinced that Storm's End would declare for Rhaenyra, since Lord Boromund Baratheon, the deceased father of Lord Boros and Rhaenys' uncle, had always been a supporter of Rhaenys. Prince Daemon was also convinced that Lady Jane Arryn, the Maiden of the Vale, would bring her support to their side. Though they believed the North to be too remote to play an important part in the war, messages were sent to those lords nevertheless. Rhaenyra was crowned queen, using the crown her father and great-grandfather had worn, thanks to Sir Stephen Darklyn, who had arrived from King's Landing. Prince Daemon placed the crown on Rhaenyra's head himself and was named Protector of the Realm, and Jacaerys was officially named Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne. Declaring Sir Otto Hightower and Queen Alicent traitors, Rhaenyra allowed for her half-siblings to be forgiven if they would bend the knee. Upon hearing these developments, King Aegon II declared Rhaenyra and Daemon traitors as well. After being persuaded by his mother Alicent and sister Helena, Aegon dispatched Grand Maester Orwyle to Dragonstone with a retinue under a peace banner, swearing on the 7-pointed star to only go as messengers, offering Rhaenyra generous terms, but was refused. With the eldest Jacaerys visiting the Arryns of the Eyrie, the Manderleys of White Harbour, and the Starks of Winterfell. Rhaenyra's second son Lucerys travelled to Storm's End, arriving before a gathering storm. He found Prince Aemond and his dragon Vhagar already there. Aemond tried to goad Lucerys into a fight, insulting him, calling him a strong bastard, but Lucerys, sworn not to fight, refused him. He delivered his message to Lord Boros Baratheon, but was refused and told to leave. Boros prevented Aemond from attacking his cousin in the castle, but did allow for the prince to follow him. Mounted on his dragon, Aemond caught up with Lucerys during a raging storm. The fight between the two dragons did not last long. Vhagar, being 5 times bigger, had the advantage, and Arrax fell broken. His head and neck washed ashore 3 days later, along with the corpse of Lucerys. Rhaenyra collapsed when learning of Lucerys' death. Prince Daemon at Harrenhal sent a raven to his wife, promising that her son's death would be avenged. Using one of his friends from King's Landing, Daemon enlisted the help of a former sergeant in the City Watch, known only as Blood, and a rat-catcher from the Red Keep, known only as Cheese. Blood and Cheese snuck into the Red Keep, using secret tunnels and hidden doors, which brought them into the Tower of the Hand. There, Queen Alicent was bound and gagged, and her bedmaid was strangled. When Queen Helena and her 3 children appeared, Blood and Cheese barred the doors, and told Helena to choose which one of her sons would die. Helena reluctantly chose Maelor, but Blood did the opposite and killed Prince Jaehaerys instead. The two fled with the prince's head, leaving the others unharmed. Blood was seized at the Gate of the Gods with the head of Prince Jaehaerys hidden in a saddle sack. Under torture, he confessed he was making for Harrenhal to collect his reward from Prince Daemon. He also described the whore who had hired him and Cheese, Miss Arya. The Goldcloaks, led by Sir Luther Largent, searched the Street of Silk from top to bottom, but found no trace of Miss Arya or Cheese. In his wrath, King Aegon II ordered all the rat-catchers in the city to be hanged. Afterward, Sir Otto Hightower brought 100 cats to the Red Keep to take their place. Queen Helena sank into a deep depression, refusing to eat, bathe, or leave her chambers, and couldn't stand to be in the presence of Maelor, having named him to die. Thus, the king took Maelor from her and gave him to Queen Alicent to raise as if he were her own. Thereafter, king and queen slept separately. She fell deeper into madness while Aegon fell into rage and drink. Sir Otto Hightower, the hand of the king, took to winning over lords, hiring sellswords, and strengthening the defences of King's Landing and seeking other alliances. He sent ravens all over Westeros. He sent riders to the holdings closer to the capital to summon their lords and ladies to court to swear fealty to King Aegon. He also reached out to Dorne, which had fought against Daemon in the War for the Stepstones, but Prince Corran Martell refused to take part. The fall of Harrenhal and the defeats at the Burning Mill and Stonehenge made Aegon fearful, who dismissed his grandfather Otto as Hand of the King and turned to Criston Cole. Sir Criston's first advice to the king was to treat those who denied him fealty as traitors. Thus, all the blacks imprisoned in the dungeons were dragged to the Red Keep's yard before the king's justice and his axe. Each prisoner was given a last chance to swear fealty to King Aegon. Only Lords Butterwell, Stokeworth and Rosby bent the knee to Aegon, while Lords Hayford, Merryweather, Hart, Buckler, Caswell and Lady Fell remained true to their vows to defend Rhaenyra's rights, and were beheaded, along with 8 landed knights and 20 servants and retainers. Their heads were mounted on spikes above the gates of King's Landing. Aegon acted by sacking Duskendale and having Lord Darkling beheaded for supporting Rhaenyra. Criston then turned his attention to Rook's Rest, for House Staunton had pledged their support to Rhaenyra as well. Lord Staunton defied his attackers and dispatched a raven to Dragonstone. Princess Rhaenys arrived on her dragon Meleys, but Criston's men attacked the dragon with scorpions, longbows and crossbows in the battle at Rook's Rest in 129 AC. When Sunfire and Vhagar also appeared, the dragons fought 1,000 feet above the ground. Meleys' jaw closed around Sunfire's neck, and Vhagar fell upon them, causing all 3 dragons to crash. From the ashes, only Vhagar rose again. Sunfire had one wing half torn from its body, while his rider, King Aegon, suffered several broken bones and severe burns. Rhaenys was found completely burned next to Meleys. After the battle, Prince Aemond and Criston Cole took Rook's Rest and put the garrison to death. The head of Meleys was brought back to King's Landing, inspiring fear amongst the small folk and causing thousands to flee the capital until the gates were barred by Dowager Queen Alicent. Aegon was brought back to King's Landing, where maesters attended his severe wounds while he slept under the influence of milk of the poppy. Sunfire was too large to be moved and was unable to fly. The dragon remained at Rook's Rest, where guards were posted to keep him safe and fed. With Aegon unable to rule, Aemond assumed protector of the realm. Lord Corlys Velaryon, upon learning of the death of his wife Rhaenys, threatened to leave Rhaenyra's cause until Prince Jaehaerys named him the Hand of the Queen. They sent Prince Joffrey to the Vale of Arryn with Lady Rhaena and 3 dragon eggs and Joffrey's dragon Tyraxis. Prince Aegon, the younger, and Prince Viserys were sent to Pentos to be fostered with the Prince of Pentos, a friend of Daemon's, until Rhaenyra had secured the Iron Throne. Jaehaerys wanted to attack the capital with as many dragons as possible. With 6 riderless dragons present on Dragonstone, Jaehaerys called out to dragon seeds, promising knighthood and wealth to anyone who could master a dragon. Many were injured or died, amongst them Lord Commander Stephen Darklin, though 4 people eventually succeeded. Aegon managed to make it to Dragonstone, and Prince Jacaerys on Vermax flew to the Lysene galleys, quickly followed by the 4 new dragon seeds. The warships tried to flee, but in the fighting, Vermax flew too low and crashed into the sea. Jacaerys leaped free, but was pierced by quarrels. The death of Jacaerys Velaryon filled Rhaenyra with anger and hatred, and she decided to use her dragons. With Criston Cole, Aemon Targaryen, and Vhagar away from King's Landing, Daemon Targaryen and Caraxes joined with Rhaenyra on Syrax, above the capital, while Corlys Velaryon's ships sailed into Blackwater Bay. Grand Maester Orwyle, trying to dispatch ravens asking for help, was arrested before any letters could be sent. Riders bearing messages were arrested at the city gates, and the 7 captains commanding the gates were killed or arrested, all by those gold cloaks still loyal to Daemon who had once commanded them. The city gates were opened for the men arriving with the Velaryon fleet, and King's Landing fell in less than a day. All from the Green Council remaining in King's Landing yielded, and Rhaenyra took her place on the Iron Throne. Dowager Queen Alicent was spared, but her father Sir Otto Hightower was beheaded. Sir Tywin Lannister was given to the torturers in the hope of regaining some of the gold he had hidden. Princes Joffrey and Aegon the Younger, Rhaenyra's remaining sons, were called to King's Landing. Aemond and Criston Cole at Harrenhal could no longer agree on a plan of action. Criston wished to withdraw south to join with Lord Ormond Hightower and Prince Daeron Targaryen, while Aemond wished to attack the capital. Criston led the Green's army south, while Aemond remained to ravage the Riverlands, hoping that Rhaenyra would send a dragon after him. Ulf the White and Hugh Hammer, dragon seeds, flew to Tumbleton, but Rhaenyra's forces there were greatly outnumbered by the approaching Hightower army. Some refugees were secretly Greens, who infiltrated the ranks of the Blank's defenders. In addition, Hulf and Hugh, since then known as the 2 Betrayers, changed their allegiance to the Greens. Though Ormond and his cousin Sir Brynden died in the First Battle of Tumbleton, the Hightower army kept the advantage. The dragons Vermithor, Silverwing and Tessarion let loose their flames upon Tumbleton, which was savagely sacked. Upon learning of Tumbleton, Rhaenyra ordered the gates of King's Landing closed and barred. The 2 betrayers, Ulf and Hugh, made the Black Council question the loyalty of the other dragon seeds, Sir Adam Velaryon and Nettles. Despite Lord Corlys Velaryon speaking in their defence, Rhaenyra ordered Adam and Nettles arrested. Adam, who had been guarding the dragons at the Dragon Pit, was warned by Corlys and escaped on sea smoke, causing Corlys's arrest. Lord Larys Strong had disguised King Aegon II during the fall of King's Landing and smuggled him to Dragonstone, where Aegon was later found by Sunfire. Ryder and Dragon went out flying again, regaining strength, while Aegon's supporters found locals willing to betray Rhaenyra due to mislike for her. Poorly defended Dragonstone fell easily, with Robert being slain by Sir Alfred Broom, who was angered at not being named Castellan by Rhaenyra. Lady Baela, Prince Daemon's daughter, escaped her attackers on her dragon, Moondancer. Sunfire blinded Moondancer with fire, however, and eventually killed the younger dragon after they crashed to the ground. The burned and battered Baela was taken captive, and King Aegon the Elder now held Dragonstone, although he broke his legs in the fighting. Daemon took Harrenhal from the few who still remained there and waited for 13 days. On the 14th day, Vhagar appeared with Aemond and his bedmaid, the pregnant seer Alice Rivers. With Alice on the ground, the dragon riders fought in the sky above the God's Eye. Their fight ended as the dragons fought, locked together, and tumbled towards the lake. According to tales, Daemon leapt from his dragon Caraxes to Aemon's dragon Vhagar, and drove the Valyrian steel longsword, Dark Sister, through Aemon's blind eye. The dragons struck the lake half a heartbeat later. Caraxes survived the crash and was able to crawl beneath the walls of Harrenhal, where he later died. Vhagar died in the water and was found some years later with Aemon's bones still attached to the saddle, and with Dark Sister still in the rider's eye socket. Daemon's remains, however, were never found. In King's Landing, the Velaryon fleet, counting more than half the army that had sailed from Dragonstone, abandoned Rhaenyra when they learned that Lord Corlys Velaryon was in the Black Cells. Those who remained could no longer be trusted. That same day, Queen Helena threw herself from Maegor's holdfast and died on the moat spikes below. Small folk believed she had been murdered by Sir Luther Largent of the Goldcloaks, however. Her dragon Dreamfire rose with a roar, snapping 2 of her chains in the dragon pit. That night, a riot rose in King's Landing. Luthor and 500 Goldcloaks went to Cobbler's Square to disperse it. A hedge knight, Sir Perkin the Flea, crowned his squire, Trystane Truefire, declaring him to be King Viserys Targaryen I's bastard. Perkin bestowed knighthood on all who would support Trystane, so many fled to their cause. The next day, some order was restored to parts of King's Landing, but chaos remained in the rest of the city. Perkin and Trystane gained strength the next night. The King's Gate and the Lion Gate were opened by rioters, the Goldcloaks at the King's Gate having fled, and those guarding the Lion Gate having joined the rioters. With Perkin holding the river gate, 3 of 7 gates were now open to enemies. The people of King's Landing no longer believed Rhaenyra could protect them. A crazed prophet known as the Shepherd led an even larger mob to the Hill of Rhaenys to kill the dragons. Joffrey mounted Syrax to fly to the dragon pit and, fearing the worst, Rhaenyra ordered her followers to go after him and bring him back. However, Rhaenyra's she-dragon was unaccustomed to the boy, and he died after being thrown from her back. Meanwhile, the rioters attacked the dragon pit. Tyraxes went into his lair and roasted many before dying. Dreamfire slew more than the other 3 dragons combined, until a crossbow blinded one of her eyes. When Dreamfire tried to leap free, the weakened dome crashed on both dragon and dragon slayers, and Syrax descended on the survivors. Rhaenyra, watching from atop Maegor's holdfast, held her remaining son, Aegon the Younger, until she saw Syrax fall. Rhaenyra's councillors agreed that the city was lost. She was persuaded to leave the next day, slipping through the Dragon Gate for Duskendale. She was refused entry at Rosby and was allowed to stay only 1 night at Stokeworth. Half her Goldcloaks deserted on the road, and attackers killed several of her knights. At Duskendale they were admitted but not allowed to stay long. Refusing to part from her son Aegon the Younger, and without ships, Rhaenyra sold her crown to buy passage on a Braavosi ship. She returned to Dragonstone, hoping to hatch a new dragon from the island's eggs. Sir Alfred Broom and his garrison killed Rhaenyra's remaining men and captured the Queen, her ladies, and Aegon the Younger. Once inside the gates, Rhaenyra faced Aegon II Targaryen and the wounded Sunfire. Aegon the Elder fed Rhaenyra to his dragon, while Aegon the Younger looked on. With the chance that Rhaenyra's loyalists would continue the fight in her son's name, Aegon the Younger became a hostage. After Sunfire the Golden died on Dragonstone, Aegon started planning his return to King's Landing. Though Rhaenyra had died, her cause lived on. Aegon II would sit the throne again, but it would only last another half a year. After Rhaenyra's forces abandoned King's Landing, chaos took control of the city for several weeks, a period known as the Moon of the Three Kings. The squire, Trystane Truefire, said to be a bastard of the late King Viserys I, was installed by Perkin the Flea in the Red Keep. Meanwhile, a second pretender king was the 4-year-old Gaemon Palehair, who was claimed to be the son of Aegon II and was established atop Visenya's Hill. Lord Boros Baratheon seized King's Landing for Aegon. Gaemon was arrested and Trystane was executed after being granted the boon of knighthood. Lord Corlys Velaryon, who had been left in the dungeons when Rhaenyra fled the city, was freed and named to Aegon's small council. As Aegon II's only remaining heir was his daughter Jaehaera, the widowed king agreed to marry the eldest daughter of Borros. With King's Landing secured for King Aegon II Targaryen, Lord Borros Baratheon led his armies against the Riverlanders who were approaching the city on the King's Road. Lord Baratheon killed Lords Darry and Mallister before he himself was killed by Lord Tully. This left King's Landing with only meagre defences, with the so-called lads only a short distance away. Lord Cregan Stark and his forces marched south to reinforce them. When the Black Army of the Lads was a day's march outside of King's Landing, there were no significant green forces to stop them. Lord Cregan Stark was coming south, and other armies were coming from the Vale of Arryn as well. King Aegon Targaryen II refused to surrender, even when Lord Corlys Velaryon, now Master of Ships on Aegon's small council, advised him that the only remaining option was to surrender and join the Night's Watch. Instead, Aegon gave orders to have an ear cut off his nephew, Aegon the Younger, and have it sent to the lads as a warning. If his bloodline died, so would Rhaenyra's. Aegon II was shortly found dead after, with blood on his lips from poisoned wine. Who poisoned the king remains unknown, though 22 men would be arrested. With King Aegon II Targaryen dead, Aegon the Younger was crowned as King Aegon III Targaryen. Although Aegon II's host had been defeated and the Velaryon fleet once more served the Iron Throne, the period that followed was named the False Dawn. The realm faced numerous problems. Much of it had been burned out by dragonfire. In particular, Aemond Targaryen's one-man war riding Vhagar had burned out most of the Riverlands. Broken men and outlaws roamed the countryside in the hundreds and thousands, and public order had collapsed in many places. The Ironborn, under the command of Dalton Greyjoy, who had sided with the Blacks as a pretext to attack wealthy green kingdoms, now refused to acknowledge the boy King Aegon III's commands to stop raiding. Lord Cregan Stark and his northern army of childless, homeless and younger men had marched to King's Landing with hopes of adventure. The sudden death of King Aegon II had robbed them of that chance, leaving Cregan furious. He had wanted to punish Storm's End, Casterly Rock and Oldtown for having supported Aegon II over Rhaenyra, but upon his arrival, Lord Corlys Velaryon had already sent out ravens suing for peace. Lord Cregan Stark could not be dissuaded from punishing the betrayers and prisoners of King Aegon II. He found the poisoning of the king foul murder, and had 22 men arrested in the name of young Aegon III, including Lord Larys Strong and Corlys Velaryon. He then made Aegon name him Hand of the King. Cregon reigned as Hand during a day filled with trials and executions. Most of those accused chose to take the black, chief among them Sir Perkin the Flea, but Sir Giles Belgrave of the King's Guard and Larys chose death. Corlys was spared a trial thanks to the intervention of Baela and Rhaena Targaryen. The day after the executions, Cregan resigned as Hand and returned to the north, leaving many of his Northmen behind in the south. With the war over, a council of 7 regents was established for the young Aegon III Targaryen. This regency was filled with many troubles as the realm struggled to rebuild from the war.